Excellent.
Okay.
All right, well, guys, super excited to be interviewing Mr. Bruce Dincin today. He's one of our franchisees in Rockville, Maryland. I think right now we may be into the 20s. This may be like between 18 and 20 of the franchise interviews we've done. And we've interviewed franchisees in, all over the country in different parts of their life cycle. Bruce is a relatively new franchisee, so it's always great to hear from a franchisee who is relatively new in this. I always say that this is an important piece for us to make sure that we are giving our franchise candidates the opportunity to hear from you guys, hear directly from the people who went through the same process they did. But also, when you're looking at a franchise really is about policy, procedure, and systems that a franchisor offers. And it's great to be able to pressure test against, is the franchisor offering that? So Bruce, what I'm excited about today is what I'd love to do is give a little, if you could start off with just some of your background. Tell us about yourself, and what we'll do is we'll kind of work our way through your background as from your time, your career path, your education career path, up into your franchising part, and we'll work through your evaluation period and all that stuff. So,
okay. So originally from Chicago, I went to the University of Illinois. At some point, I came out to Washington D.C. I got my MBA at Georgetown University, and then my career started. I was in consulting in corporate America for quite a while out here. I felt like it was. Sorry.
What consulting firm were you with?
Oh, it was Anderson Consulting.
Yeah.
It was. So it's now Accenture. So it's dating myself. It's back then. But I worked at a lot of big companies. I worked at American Express. I worked at, airlines. I was in hospitality, and then at Choice Hotels. And about 5 years ago, probably in my mind, I was thinking, what do I really want to do? And I was fairly successful in corporate America. I wasn't on a path to be a CEO, but things were well. And I always wanted to be in healthcare. I've always had a really good relationship with the elderly and the geriatric. I like it. It gives me joy. And I wanted to own my own business. And a lot of it is because I wanted my values and my ethics to be what set the standard for my company, whether it was small or large. And this opportunity came about. And I was looking at different franchises, and HomeWell was just the absolute right fit for me. I have a lot of business experience, but I wasn't, I don't have any healthcare experience. And what I found is HomeWell was really holding my hand. And so even a year and a half into it, I still work with a consultant every week who's helpful. And, they want you to be successful. And, I don't want to sound like a shill, but I was familiar with their model because I know some other folks at HomeWell, and the model really is helping out new franchisees. And I saw that at Choice Hotels, which is really, at the end of the day, a franchise modeling company. So, so that's my quick journey to HomeWell.
When you were at Choice Hotel, because that is very much, it's definitely a franchise model.
Yeah.
It's a little bit different than the HomeWell model, but it's definitely a franchise model. When you were at Choice Hotel, what was your role there?
It was marketing and media. So I was responsible for not all the advertising, but a lot of the media and buying it, the TV, the radio, the digital, social, Facebook, et cetera, doing that, and then working with the advertising team. So it was pretty marketing focused.
Yeah.
And it was fun. I liked it. There was a lot of perks. It was good. And, but I just wanted to do something more. So,
yeah. Well, I know coming from the world of consulting and coming from the world of marketing, and one of the big pieces of those are, well, there's two major things. One, you could probably put together a deck faster than most people in the world. And secondarily, both those worlds, consulting and marketing, are highly evaluative. So, I mean, I want to talk to you a little bit about how you looked at this opportunity. How did you come across evaluating it when your initial, like, okay, I'm going to look at, you know, I'm going to look at healthcare, I'm going to look at HomeWell. Did you look at any other brands? And I know you have some relationships inside of HomeWell, but did you look at any other brands to compare? And then when you started your evaluation of this, what were those major stones or rocks for you that needed to be hit in order to feel comfortable about moving into a brand like this?
Yeah. So I was, right now it's as I say it, I wanted to be in healthcare, but at the time, I also, one of my main goals was to own my own business. So I looked at other industries, should it be fast food? Is it something like that? Is it a convenience store? And I ended up with, and I got the FDDs from a lot of different companies, and I did look at a lot of different brands for in-home care. My evaluation in home care, it had to do with the growth, right? I mean, the altruistic reasons I'm in it for are great, but it's an aging population. I didn't want to get something, and I'm just using this as an example, like a Taco Bell, and then all of a sudden Taco Bells aren't in favor, things go down, and it's not really the place where you want to be. So I wanted to be somewhere that had some longevity. When I looked at it versus other brands, I didn't find, material differences in the cost. So to me, it was more qualitative and what was the right fit and who's going to be the right fit for me in terms of those brands. In terms of the monetary, it was, what are going to be the startup costs, when am I going to be breaking even, et cetera. So looking at that, I dove into the numbers because I'm a numbers person, but at the end of the day, a lot of it really was qualitative for me.
Nice. I always love when people look at multiple different concepts. I love when they look at not just the home care space. I think the home care space is super special. I personally love the idea that you can make money and feel really good about yourself when you go to sleep at nighttime as well. And I think, sometimes in fast food and QSR, maybe that's not always the case.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Agreed.
So when did you start your evaluation period? And so when did you kind of like have that first conversation with HomeWell? And then as you went through the evaluation, like what was your kind of timing on that? And when did you come on board officially?
So 2018 is when I started the conversations, and I came on officially, I think at the end of 2018. So, it was a lot of conversations looking at FTTs. What happened with me is that in Maryland, the licensing process takes a long time.
Yeah.
And there are a couple of hiccups. HomeWell was really helpful in that and, kind of getting started. But Maryland was really tricky. There were a lot of changes that were happening at the time. And then COVID hit. So I got my license officially in 2019. But it took a long time. Or was it 2020? I kind of forget because the COVID is a little bit of COVID brain. But it was 2018, and then 20 got my license. But I would say I really started, I consider my start date January 1st, 2021. I had my license for a couple of months. And in Maryland, you need a temporary license to prove for a couple of months that you can sustain the business. We did that. So I would say January 1st, 2021. So I've been in business really for about a year and a half.
Okay. Excellent. So I know Maryland is one of those states, probably maybe one of the, if not the trickiest, probably top 3 or 4 tricky states out there in terms of licensure process. So,
yeah.
But
in most places, even in Maryland, though, they said it could be 6 to 9 months because there was a backlog. I don't know. There were some hiccups, but the other part was I still had my other job, and so it worked out well.
Yep. Excellent. How did your talk about your ramp up then? So really looking at 2021, a couple things, different things here, because I want to start with one question and I will go back to it a little bit more. Talk about your initial staff. Like how did your office look when you first set up? What were some of the, I always love to ask the question, like, how did you initially start taking on clients? And then how did you initially start taking, what were the initial lead sources you did? Is there anything that you would have done differently now that you have the power of hindsight? And then we'll go back to, but like, I guess the two major things here, when you're looking at your ramp up, how did your initial office look like in terms of staffing? How was your ramp up? What kind of sources did you use for referral sources? And then what would you have done differently in that period? Or what would you double down on?
Yeah. So when I first started, I wanted to hire an administrator to help with recruiting and kind of help with all the back end. And then in Maryland, it's required that you have a nurse, a registered nurse. So those were the first two employees. The registered nurse was part-time. The administrator was full-time. The administrator didn't work out. I got a different administrator. And I was a little bit slow on using third-party referrals. There's, a place for mom, caring.com, and Karen Homes. And in my opinion, a place for mom is just head and shoulders above the rest. And I would have ramped that up a little bit more and focused on that. I hired a salesperson, and it was right before a spike in COVID, and it didn't work out. So in terms of that, I would have delayed that salesperson. And then when the salesperson, when I fired him or let him go, I did a lot more of the sales, and I really liked it. And it really helped me understand the business that much more. It didn't ramp me up. In the beginning, the ramp up was really, shoe leather, walking, talking to people, getting out there, and then the third-party referral sources. And I found those really invaluable and, somewhat even starting slow. I had one of my early clients was a 24/7 client, and we managed it. It was good, but, it was a lot in the beginning. So the third-party referrals really helped me ramp up. A real turning point. Well, I can get to that later. Was there anything else you wanted to ask me about, like what I would double down on, or anything else?
No, I think that's awesome. I love that. It's one of those questions that there's no perfect answer.
Yeah.
Everybody's different, right? So in the next question I want to get into a little bit as well, there's no perfect answer to this as well. But I think it's really important for the people who are listening in today and the people who are listening online to kind of get some of this information. And one of the big questions I always like to ask, because you're only as good as your staff. So do you have like a certain HR philosophy you follow? Do you have a hiring guideline or hiring, goal that you always look forward at? So what is your kind of HR philosophy in hiring? And how do you implement that in both your day-to-day staff and your caregivers? And is it all different?
It's not that different. The philosophy, and it's different in corporate America, where you're really looking, I think, a lot at their past in terms of their potential that they've proven it, which is also very important to me in terms of the administrator and the caregivers, and then the salespeople that I've hired. But, I've since added 2 salespeople in terms of I needed their help in managing the growth and accelerating my growth. And everything that I look for, including the caregivers, is communication and that compassion and the kind of love for the job. So my salespeople, they're not real care managers, but they kind of act like it because they really care about people. And it comes across when you're talking to people. My administrator, who is the scheduler and the HR person, which is a really tough job, she cares about the caregivers and she really cares about the clients, both. And you really got to care about everyone. We have an orientation about every 2 weeks. We just had 10 caregivers in yesterday. And, they're wonderful. And it just brings me so much joy when they're coming in and I'm meeting them. And the two things I talk to them about are, we appreciate you because they're on the front lines. And we go around and we talk about where we're from and why'd you decide to become a caregiver. Now, we had already asked them these questions in terms of why they decided to become a caregiver. And if it's about, we're looking for, we're doing it because it's a blessing. We're doing it because, the world is circular and someday I want someone to be taking care of me. I took care of my grandparents, but that real heart. And that's with my salespeople, it's with my care managers, it's with my HR person, and it's with me. And that's what I mean about my values and my ethics. So that's really the main philosophy. Now, having said that, they still need to do the job,
Yeah.
right? And that's, it's getting the job done. And one of the most important things in my mind to get the job done is that communication. There's always going to be something that happens. And I say to the caregivers, you can't make it, you need to, don't just call. We can solve anything if you call. We can solve anything if we just talk and you give us a heads up. And that's the same thing with our whole team, right? We're like a family. Just let me know and we can, solve anything together. So I'd say that's my HR philosophy, if you will.
No, it's brilliant. I love that. And it is really interesting. I asked all these questions individually of every franchisee, and everybody has a different take on it, generally similar. But the one thing that does echo through from almost everybody is that they do want to make sure that when they're speaking with their caregivers, that it's about care, it's about passion, it's about. And so many people I've talked to says if the first question out of their mouth is how much do I make, it's just something that they know that probably won't be the fit for them.
Right. Right.
It's interesting. So as you ramped up and as you went through your first year, you had a really unique year in 2021. We are post crazy levels of pandemic, but then we're also hitting COVID, where 2021 was no walk in the park either. There was a lot of different things happening in terms of COVID, in terms of everything. What were some of the struggles that you kind of hit in that, and what were the strategies you used to kind of push through them, and how is that different in 2022?
So, I know there's a lot of, I don't know if it's controversy, but about the vaccines. My feeling was all our caregivers need to get the vaccine, full stop. And soon after that, where I live is Montgomery County, and Montgomery County mandated it, which made it easier communication. But at the time, our clients, every single one was asking, are they vaccinated? And I couldn't in good faith send anybody out there. So if somebody didn't want to get the vaccine, it was just, I'm sorry, but you can't work for HomeWell right now. We had a lot of PPE. We were pretty liberal with it, in terms of the masks. If a client, if a client had COVID or contracted it, or maybe that's why they were calling us, we could almost always fill it. There are almost always caregivers that were okay to go to somebody who had COVID. And there would be an upcharge, what we would pay the caregiver and what we would charge the client. But we would always be able to fill those. There were, issues. It was harder to get into rehabs. I won't say harder, it was impossible. We couldn't get into the rehabs. There were a couple of times where we would have sitting jobs because, they couldn't find another caregiver. So there were some opportunities there. There were a lot of opportunities for people leaving assisted living facilities because people wanted them at home. On the other hand, I felt that there were a lot of negatives because as people were working from home, it used to be, Dan, let's say during COVID, he's taking care of his mom, but normal times, Dan would be going into an office, and when he's going into an office, he can't really take care of mom. So there were pros and cons to it. Our philosophy was safety first. We would never send a caregiver or pressure a caregiver to go somewhere where they're not comfortable with. Again, it just comes down to communication. And we had a lot of caregivers who were like, yeah, I'm not working that. We'll totally understand and move on and then find a caregiver that could. So there were pluses and minuses for COVID. It was definitely a scary time. And I think that's it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it's great.
Okay.
So, and I do want to I do want to make sure that we offer enough time. I want to be cognizant of your timing here. So I don't want to quite start wrapping up yet. I do have, but well, I guess we'll start kind of heading in that direction a little bit. One of the things that we always talk about in when you first get in, so when I first came into the home care space, and I always assumed, because my only experience with home care was my wife's grandmother. And my wife's grandmother had a 24-hour living person, Emma. Emma was awesome. Emma still comes to Christmas dinner. She hasn't in the last 2 years because of COVID, but after my wife's grandmother passed away, we had her still come to Christmas dinner because that's how impactful she came in our life and on my mother-in-law and all that stuff. So my only viewpoint of home care was that it's all 24-hour patients. That is not the case. So talk to me a little bit about your mix. Talk about, you talked about where your referral sources came from. Now, where are you getting your referral sources from? And, talk about your mix of clientele and how that normally looks like. And then what is your major referral sources and how are you getting them, and how's HomeWell really been assistant in helping that process?
So in terms of referral sources, it's more word of mouth, right? We're not so large. I mean, it's been a year and a half that's it's spreading like wildfire, but it's much more word of mouth because we're doing a really good job. We still do quite a bit through the secondary referral sources, like A Place for Mom. We're reaching out much more into the rehabs and the assisted living, which has been beneficial, but that's really still ramping up. That takes a little bit longer. In terms of the mix, my philosophy is it's much easier to staff 8, 10, and 12-hour shifts. That's what the caregivers want. But our philosophy is it's a 4-hour minimum. And then even sometimes we'll do less than that because it almost always grows. So what's our mix? Maybe, if I'm talking about number of clients, it's probably 10% that are 24/7, another 20% that are 8+ hours. And I'm talking about a day. I'd have to look at the overall census, but we have, a decent amount that are 4 hours, that have gone to 8 hours, that have gone to 12 hours, that have gone to assisted living, and that we've remained sitters with them at assisted living. So my point of view is, if you can staff it, then do it. And that's what I always talk to my staffing person, and I kind of leave it up to her. Like, can we do it? If we can, great. If we can't, then we can't. But I also I pay more for the 4-hour shifts. And, it's sometimes a weird mix. Sometimes it's a negotiation with caregivers where you pay more for the 4-hour shift, but if it turns into a 12-hour shift, they're not going backwards. So it's the same amount. So, in terms of the exact mix, it's a little bit of a kind of potpourri. But I definitely have quite a few 24/7s, probably about 5 to 10 4-hour-a-day shifts, 5 days a week. But in my opinion, it always grows. HomeWell's been there holding my hand, guiding me on what they think works best, where it goes. And especially with the sales training with Michelle Cohen. My wife was a little bit nervous about this whole endeavor. She was very supportive, but she was a little bit nervous. And because of COVID, I didn't go into Texas to do the in-person training. We did it via Zoom, and my wife participated in it. And after a day with Michelle, my wife was like 100% on board. And then it was multiple days. So that sales training has just been invaluable, and not just for sales, kind of the philosophy of it, what to do, how to handle it, where to go. And, it's just been great for the marriage.
That's awesome. Which is the most important thing.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Oh, I just had a really good question. Oh, with the 4-hour minimum, did you always start off with the minimum? Was that like kind of, and I know you said that you don't always stand by that, but when you open your doors, did you say, I'm going to take anybody who can give me something, or was it always a 4-hour minimum?
When I started, it was a 4-hour minimum and 20 hours a week. And then I was, you know, I changed that pretty quickly, and I lowered the minimum per week. There were some places I really wanted to get into. There's a place around here called Leisure World, which is independent living. It's like 9,000 residents, and they're pretty locked up with a different agency. And the way to get in is to be more flexible. And I
Yeah.
really wanted to get in and be more flexible. So it's somewhat on a case by case basis, and people are different. I mean, sometimes, my new salesperson has quite a bit of experience, and she's always like, you need to, like, what is it? What's the minimum? And I know she's right, but sometimes it really is on a case by case basis. And sometimes I'm also a soft touch. I mean, there are some people, they really need the care. They can't afford a full week, and this is what they can do. And I say, if you can be a little bit flexible on the hours in terms of the exact time, I'm going to help you. Because at the end of the day, that's why I'm in the business. And, it'll all work out.
I mean, I think that approach just kind of pays dividends in the long
Yeah.
run. I mean, listen, at the end of the day, you got to have a gut, and that
Yeah.
gut means something. You got to trust your gut in making those decisions. And I think when you have a hard, fast minimum, you probably lose a lot of potentially great customers, referrals, and all those different things, which is a pretty important piece of it.
Oh, it's a huge piece of it. And really, I cannot tell you how many started off with, it's a couple of days a week, and it's just, you know, grown, some
Yeah.
into 24/7.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Um, and for the sake of timing here, again, I'm just trying to be cognizant of all the timing. I see a bunch of questions that are already being laid out there. I want to make sure that we address all those. So you're coming into year 2.
Yeah,
So,
about halfway through.
well, I'm sorry, you're coming in. Yeah, you're about halfway through year 2. Are you on budget to what your expectation was? And then, I mean, this is August, September. It's budget planning season for 2023. Have you already started to look at what what you want to picture for growth? So I guess for the first question is, are you hitting what you'd want to see your growth patterns in your budget for 2022? And then,
Yeah, I would say so. I had a 3-year plan, and I worked on this with some folks from HomeWell. My plan was year 1, I'm probably not going to make money, right? It's an investment. Year 2, my goal was to break even. Year 3 was to make money. Year 4 was to make more money. And then year 5, take off. So, I was just talking with my accountant, and year 2, I'm going to make pretty good money, right? Things
yeah,
are really ramping up, in terms of profitability, bottom line. And that's with increasing labor costs, right? When I 2018, labor costs were much different than they are now.
mhm,
And because there are so many agencies in Montgomery County, there's like 600. Most of them are small mom and pops, but there are still all the big ones. There's a lot of competition. So there's only so much, there's only so much you can charge, but things have really taken off. I mean, things are going really well with my census, with my hours. I think it comes, it's due to the team and our philosophy and what we're doing. So I'm way ahead. And my accountant was like, let me check the numbers, because you don't go from minus this to plus this. Let me just check them. And he checked them, and things are going well, and they're only ramping up. So much so that, I hired the 2 new salesperson people. I'm going to hire another administrator, even with all those extra labor costs. Things are going really well. And I expect it to just, continue
yeah,
as word of mouth grows, and, our reputation grows, and then the care that we provide. And I'm not just being modest, or really it is the team. They're really great. We're all on the same page. And, we treat our caregivers well, and, they will still, if we only have a 4-hour shift with them and another agency has a 12-hour shift, they're going to do the 12-hour shift. I get that. But if there's even close, I feel confident they're going to work with us.
Yeah. In terms of the relationship with the franchise system that you have, I think one of the unique things about HomeWell is the relationship the franchisees have with each other. How is your relationship with the franchise system? Do you lean on the system a lot? Do you have, like, is that something that has been super beneficial for you?
In the beginning, when I say the beginning, I would say the first 14 months, it was a lot of leading. It was a lot of calling. When, there was like a conference and we would meet in person, I was just peppering people with questions, and very, very, very helpful and kind. Call them up anytime, have a Zoom, invite me, to go visit. It's a little bit less so now. Now more of I won't call them issues, but they're pretty local, right? I'm from Chicago. So in Chicago, the saying is all politics are local, right? What's happening on your block is the most important. What happens, in Montgomery County and the labor, it's really what's about here. And I'd say it's, I'm not quite at a mentor stage, but I am talking to other HomeWells that are just starting, and I feel like I can now provide advice to them, and it's, giving back. And then there are still people that I'm talking to. So yeah, the community has been very helpful, very open, very kind, very, it's non-competitive, right? We're not in overlapping territories. We're all working with each other, and everyone wants, we're all in it for basically the same reasons. So, yep, it's been very helpful.
Excellent. Well, I think my last two questions I always finish up with, I think one of them's a bit of a moot point to even ask, because I always like to ask people how's business going, but I think you did a really nice job of letting me know how your business is going right now. So, and I always like to finish off by just saying, listen, if you were to go back to 2018, would you do it again?
Absolutely. I would do it again. You said, what would you double up on and double down? One thing that I forgot is, I come from a marketing background, and it's pretty strong, pretty analytical, but it was national marketing. Again, I would say to think it's local, and it's different kind of marketing, and it's different kind of work, and things are going well. I am taking a vacation, and there is time off, but it's still a lot of hard work. But it's hard work that, and this is one of the things, I want the hard work that I put in to directly affect not just the bottom line, but the quality of care, the quality of the product. So yeah, I mean, I love it. I love the caregivers. In the very beginning, I was spending more time with the clients, which I really liked. And it's a little bit less now, but I still get a charge, out of spending time with the clients. So it's fun.
Nice. Well, let's jump into some questions. I really appreciate it today. I really do. And if anybody doesn't have any additional questions, I'm going to go ahead and read some of the questions that are out there. So first question is, at this point, how many customers do you currently have, and how many caregivers are on your roster?
Good question. Right now, our census is 40 clients. It's about 1,500 hours a week. In terms of caregivers, it kind of goes up and down. It's, for a 24/7 client, you're going to need 4 to 5 caregivers. And then we have some caregivers that are going to cover multiple clients, but it's about 100 to 125 caregivers, right, who we're calling on and working, and it kind of, it goes up and down and taking vacations. So we have a lot of backup. So it's about 100 to 125.
What is your turnaround in caregivers? It's an interesting question.
House turnaround in terms of hiring them?
I think he's probably asking in terms of, do you churn a lot of caregivers?
Not really. I mean, some we churn, they're just not the right fit. and it's time to go. Usually when they're with us, you know, they sometimes are working with another agency also, but I never consider them gone. We're not severing relationships. So there might be some where they're gonna go for a 12-hour, but when we get cases, we're still calling them up, see what their availability is. We're always checking in on them. What's your availability? Come in, developing relationships and talking to them. So it's not that high. I use Paycheck's payroll system, and they show you each person, like, this person has a high likelihood to leave. And I'm like, I get it. There's other things going on, but it's pretty good. And we work with their hours. There's some people who are going back to school and they're like, I always want these hours. Those are the hours that we'll give them.
Yeah.
So,
this next question is in terms of, what do you pay your caregivers? I mean, do you currently have a like a percentage that you're paying your caregivers?
That's one, I don't know if this is public, but that's one I prefer not to answer right
Sure,
now.
yeah,
If that's
sure.
okay, just because if that's
Yeah.
okay.
No worries.
Mhm.
How
Here's
many
what I will
hours
say.
on average?
Let me say this. The minimum wage in Montgomery County is $15.65, and we are paying more than minimum wage.
Okay. How many hours on average do the caregivers work per week? And in general, where are the two most common locations where caregivers offer services at?
The first part, it really varies.
Yeah.
There are some caregivers, they're working 40 hours for us, and I know they're working 40 hours for another agency, and they're just working. And then, with overtime rules, it depends what's going on. So we have some that are working for us 60 hours a week because the client likes them so much and it works. We have others, it's probably, trying to think of the least amount, right? I mean, there are some, they just want to work 12 hours a week. There's things that are going on. And then, the average is probably 20 to 30, but it also fluctuates quite a bit depending on what's going on with them, their families, schooling, what's going on with us. And it's also changing quite a bit as we grow. The second part of the question, I don't think I understood. Where do they like to work?
I think it's in regards to, I mean, my answer would probably be like in the home of the customers, or in like facilities where they're doing kind of sitting services in the facilities, is kind of the,
Got it.
I think
would
that's the
say
question.
it's 80% in the home and maybe 20% in city. Actually, 20% is a little bit high. And that's usually short-lived, where if they're in rehab and then they're coming home, then we'll work with them. We are now still ramping up to provide more in-home care and independent living. I feel like that's really one of our greatest opportunities. And even in assisted living, and that's what our salesperson is doing. But it takes a little while to crack, so we're getting in there, but it's still a smaller percentage than the in-home.
Yeah. This next question, I kind of feel like we answered, but in case you have any more to add to it, great discussion. I'm sure this you may get to this. One of my main concerns is finding reliable caregivers, not so much finding those who need to be cared for. What has been your experience and strategy in finding good caregivers? My guess is that demand outstrips the supply. I feel like we answered that.
It does, and my HR and recruiter person has just been. She has a broad reach. She knows a lot of people. She's been in the business, so she knows people that she can reach out to. And I found that my first administrator didn't have experience, and we were relying on Indeed and some other areas. And then my second one had some experience, but they were from a different county. And now the one that I have that's really helping me propel forward lives in the county, knows people in the county, and has worked in the county. And that's helped quite a bit.
Yeah.
And, as she's become busier and we've grown, the inside salesperson that I have is also helping taking calls when we're doing, people from Indeed or people from A Place for Mom coming in. And, we're going to interview them and see if they're reliable. And, even that, there's still always some issues, but, they're in it for the right reasons. We're paying them right. And it's, they're good, and if they're not, it's, you got to get rid of them. So.
Yep. And I feel like, again, this is another one that you kind of answered, in case you want to opine one more time on any of these things. Are you struggling with finding good caregivers? I asked, since I've heard there's a lot of bad ones out there and that it's hard to find good ones. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, I think it would be honestly, we're not having that difficult of a time, right? There's going to be a time when, someone calls and we have like a glut of caregivers that only want to work overnights, or they only want, these times, but we're able to answer the bell every single time. Someone needs somebody, we're going to get somebody there, and I'm going to make that happen. And sometimes it is the financial issue. And to me, it's still, I'm in the investment phase, and I'm still going to make money on that client if I pay the caregiver more, but I may not make the percentage that I originally thought. But to me, it's more important to staff it, get the person there. We'll kind of figure it out and, get your census up. And it's worked so far. So yes, it's not easy, but if you're in it for the right thing and you have the right people and you're willing to pay, and I'm not saying I'm paying exorbitantly, but I am, and that again was my strategy. I'm willing to pay. I want the good caregivers. There's a lot of wealth in this area, and if people, they want great caregivers.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to give it to them.
I guess my last question in regards to that, and I think, listen, pay matters. Like, of course it does, but you seem to be becoming, I love one of the comments you made, like, you are confident that if the hours are close between, not a 6-hour and a 4-hour shift, or 12-hour and a 4-hour shift, but you feel that if it's like a 6-hour and a 4-hour shift between you and another agency, you're going to win out.
100%.
What is it? Are you doing anything else on top of that to like become the agency of record for these guys? Is there anything like kind of like just in terms of the way you manage them, any other incentive that you do that kind of like helps them really, or is it just that you guys are, they know you'll get consistent staffing from you?
I think a lot of it is really the respect and appreciation that we pay for them, that we pay towards them more than anything. And I really believe it, right? And sometimes it's, you get some clients that are really tough and they get mad at you because you didn't butter the bread right. And I'm looking at them, and I'm like, you have a caregiver who's wiping your mom's tush and you're worried about the bread and butter. It's beyond me. And I have a really deep, real appreciation for the caregivers. And I think the team does too. And there's a lot of respect, in terms of Montgomery County is a pretty large county. And, we try to help them out geographically. We're going to help them out, if they need to. In terms of, we have it's the caregiver of the month. We do other little things, we try to be as kind to them as possible, listen to them, but a lot of it is listening. And, we're looking at what others are paying. We also pay competitively, and we will really help them out when we can. So I wish, there was some secret sauce. I wish I knew exactly what it was. And, I hope the shoe doesn't drop. I hope I'm not talking to you in a month and I'm like, I can't find any caregiver, something's wrong. Maybe it's our size, but right now we're doing pretty well. And it is a difficult balance, because when you first start off, you have to have the balance of the caregivers and the clients, because they're not just waiting around for you. So you kind of got to have the census to just call them up and say, okay, this is what we have and what we can do. So, and I'm not being naive. I know it's a problem. And, we have one client, she's a a wonderful woman. She's bedbound. She's working with another agency that's been in business for a long time, and they're a good agency, but they couldn't fill Saturdays and Sundays. And, eventually she's like, we're okay. Eventually she reached out to us and like, we can fill the Saturday and Sunday. And then we picked up 3 more shifts because we can fill those shifts. And she's like, I don't know where you keep getting these great caregivers from. I don't know how you do it. I'm like, well, give me all your 24/7 and I'll show you everything. But it's really worked out. And I think it's also, you'd have to put the client first, and I communicate a lot with the clients, but it's also, when we have really tough clients, it's also having hard conversations with the clients and say like, you need to chill a little bit. This is what's going on, and let the caregivers know that you have their back also. And I think that they appreciate that. So
God, that goes such a long way.
Yeah.
Knowing that you are not just going to abide to what the customer says, but you're going to protect them, that means a lot. So,
yeah.
Well, Bruce, listen, man, I think this is phenomenal. I really enjoyed the conversation. I enjoyed hearing your story, speaking with you. Thank you all for such great questions. And, we'll see you on the next one, but I really do appreciate you coming out today. And I hope you have a safe trip to Washington next week.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I will. Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Thank you very much for your time. Happy
Thank
to
you,
talk
Bruce,
to
and thank
anybody
you,
or answer
everyone.
questions.
See you guys.
Bye-bye.